Hi friends, it's Eric here with the Arch Admin, and I have just gotten back from running a errand that took me back to my house, to the bank, to fast food, and back here. So I've been gone like an hour and a half or something. And I'm thinking the whole time I was driving, I was just thinking about the way shit works, and what it boils down to is this. Two themes I want to work here. One of the themes is that the barrier in the status quo that prevents human beings from successfully understanding their existence is that they don't get that every singular instantiation is two instantiations. And instantiation, that word I mean to use, like they use in propositional logic, meaning the creation of an instance of. So we talk about like this cigarette is lit. Well, that's what I'm doing there is I'm instantiating a time object, a referent for this event, the cigarette being lit and therefore smokable. It's an instantiation. It creates an object, namely an epistemological object that then gets categorized in SI. So I go, here's an epistemological reference. The other night, I remember lighting that cigarette and going, smoke, 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 because it was hard getting it lit. And I can use it later on as a reference point as though the event were not the event at all, but rather I set a label and a set of descriptions that exist solely for the purpose of being an anchor point in metaphysical meaning making. Despite the fact that it's an entirely physical reference point, it loses its significance as a physical reference point immediately. But that's not the point. So every instantiation then is the instantiation of that time object, the event that you're creating. This is an event. It is named. It contains certain attributes and not other attributes. But you're also instantiating the instance of your observation of that. So that's what I mean by every instantiation is two. It's not just the cigarette is lit. It's also I observe. I am an observer. The thing is, now let's go back to the beginning of time. When humans, not the beginning of time, but the beginning of when humans were. So, if you go back to humanity's development, the first thing that happened evolutionarily was that our bodies achieved disposable income in SI. Our bodies achieve disposable income in SI means we aren't like the turtles out there. Your tortoises. Kimberly has tortoises. Two tortoises who, when the sun comes out, they go and they sit in the sun. When it's cold, they just don't move. Because their bodies have said, we get you enough SI to make sure you can sustain, but we're not going to give you such a surplus of SI that you can find something else to do with your time. Because at the end of the day, the most important SI of all is the kind that makes you scream in agony. If you break a bone, or you accidentally get stabbed in the head or something, or chop your arm off or something like that, and it's really, really painful, you can't avoid that kind of feeling. You can't talk therapy your way through it. All my bones are shattered in both of my legs. I feel bad, doctor. Well, do did you have bone-related issues with your mother when you were a child? No, I think it's that my bones are shattered and blood's coming out of my legs and I'm in physical agony. You're projecting, Donnie. You're projecting. I know that really, this is about you feeling out of control right now, isn't it? Well, the thing is, we forget that that kind of SI is done automatically for us. Our bodies give us extra energy to go do shit that we don't have to do to survive. If I just was trying to survive, and the environment were cooperative enough, and the competition for resources were small enough, I could live somewhere tropical and feast off of the ecosystem's cycle with little effort, potentially, and then spend a lot of time just resting or something. But of course, if I just rest, if I say, okay, well, oh good, I've met my caloric intake needs. Yes, rest time. And I sit down and rest. Well, that's not fun. So humans have excess energy because our bodies deal with the physical component of SI automatically in ways that give us a surplus. We don't have to spend time making sure that we feel physically okay for the most part. So then, with that epistemological end of things, the physical end of the physical epistemology, SI, attended to genetically, evolutionarily, or whatever, then humans began to become via epistemological builds. That is to say, rendering novel experiences and linkages from active volcanoes of meaning into named dormant mountains that you climb. So it's like human evolution happens via epistemological efficiency. TE and SI are made to go together because what SI wants on a physical level, physical SI, is looking for simple algorithms that can be repeated so that SI doesn't have to figure out how to deal with keeping the self okay. SI would like instead to engage in its metaphysical component if it's liberated to do so enough by nurture, nature, and cognitive function stack. When it does so, it seeks identity build over time that is grounded in safety and comfort and certainty, and that indulges, when things are safe and comfort and certain enough, in such reward frills as FE juice or TE juice or whatever your SCI is paired with, you know. But it naturally seeks the TE certainty that it's most comfortable epistemologicalizing. When SE takes a TE wisdom and epistemologicalizes it or whatever, then what it does is it renders it into a little recipe that then the SI FE user, for example, like an ISFJ, doesn't have to use any TE. She just uses SI on someone else's little TE packet. So the second thing to note then about human evolution is the epistemologies are self-improving, particularly SI. NI is less self-improving. To the extent that it is self-improving, it does so by piggybacking off the NESI axis. So the reason SI is so self-improving as an epistemology is because it's not a closed system where you can come up with algorithms to deal with problems in the system. It's subject to its own evaluatory checks, bounces, and adjustments. So I can say, here's a better methodology of utilizing introverted sensing to better attend to myself and my own well-being and comfort over time. And that's why NE is paired with there, is because NE says, let's stay out of knowledge and still in possibilities. Let's stay out of what is known and stay in what is potential. And then we're going to presumably use TI and FE to parse away some of those potentialities and to collapse some of them down into conclusions, which then SI can render as conclusions. But if it is to be rendered as caused realities or manifest happenings, then it's going to have to go through SE. So the thing about that is the engine behind it all is decision making. When are we going to make a decision? So let's walk into a given situation and see how it plays out. I walk in to a room. There's Joe, and he's shaking his finger at Steve, and Joe's saying, "Shame on you, Steve." Now, this is an observation has occurred. I observed this thing. Several instantiations have occurred. The existence of the observer has been instantiated because, after all, there's at least one instance of this observer, so we know it must exist. And then the instance of Steve and the instance of Joe have both been instantiated because they both are referenced as agents within the observed state of affairs. Additionally, a behavior has been instantiated, namely the wagging of the finger, and then we're left to decide what else to instantiate. The cognitive functions are a way in which we choose which channel of instantiation to walk down. So if I'm an FE Dom, I go in there and say, whoa, 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 Joe is mad and Steve is looking like he's not too happy either. There's some kind of miscommunication going on. What we need to do is make sure everybody's feelings are getting heard here. I'm worried. Now, if that's my reaction, I've chosen to walk down the FE time object instantiation channel, which is basically saying I've chosen to interpret this through metaphysical FE on the grounds that I believe I can deduce from current emotional behaviors states of emotion that represent attitudinal positions towards the other, and therefore I can predict that behavior of those two individuals, and or I can choose to use my perceptions of their bias to validate or invalidate their positions, which works on most people most of the time because most people aren't very careful with their positionings of things. It doesn't work around here at all, and when FE people start to make this bias argument, I go, oh, you poor little darling, you. Anyway, the point being that that's fundamentally what cognitive functions are, is they're channels of instantiation, and when we attend to things, we observe, and when we observe, we create objects. Now, some forms of observation are actually direct physical action. So if I'm swinging a hammer and hitting something, the object I create is caused impact in the world. It's not really an object because I'm divorcing this thing from meaning anyway. As soon as I start referring to it, though, and saying, well, that time that I hit that thing with the hammer, well, now it's been instantiated as a time object for the purpose of referencing, because the next pillar of this whole thing is communicability. Now, TI and FE are all about communicability. TE and FI are all about the subject. So I don't need to communicate to anybody that I moved that thing that was there over there so that I could get through there without bumping into shit anymore. I don't need to even articulate what it is I'm talking about. You get the general gist of it is fine, right? why don't I need to articulate that, whether it was good TE or not good TE? What's the fucking point in arguing about it? It's no longer in my way. That's all I care about. See, that's why TE is subjective. There is no point in arguing about it. If I say to you, "Oh, I'm so happy I moved that thing out of my way," you're gonna go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You moved it? You did it wrong." You might say that if you're watching me move it in the process. You might go, "Well, why are you moving stupid like that?" But let's say I've already accomplished the goal and the thing's already done, and it's exactly what I want it to be. There's no way of knowing that I knocked something over because I picked it back up again. There's no way of critiquing that TE. It's not objectively communicable in ways that have any positive feedback implications. In other words, they don't ripple out at all. They wash out immediately because they're situationally, particularly, and individuatedly personal, subjective. So if all humanity had were these subject referencing instantiations, the instantiation is always the thing I want and me. Because remember, there are always two instantiations going on. There's always the observer being instantiated as well. And we say these things because remember that when we engage in talking about anything or making any meaning about something, we must approximate it into a status because we can't process every variable in real time because something has to stand still for us to know that the other things are moving. So where do I go with this? Right, so TI and FE. So TI goes, let's talk about a TE thing. Let's say I do see you about to move it in stupid. I go, don't do it like that. Do it like this. And the person says, why? And I say, because I'm the king. In that case, it's FE SE. It's saying basically because you're an underling, FE, and because that's what's been decided and we're following through on shit. Stop asking questions. Both of those things are ways to avoid that question, but chances are I will provide a better mechanism to give you an answer, and that's TI. I'll say the reason you should do it that way is because it's preferable to the alternative. Here's how I predict your current course of action is going to play out. Here's what we know it definitely won't do because you're not standing over there. Here's what we definitely know you will do because you are hitting that glass with a hammer. And there's 95% chance that's going to break. So this is a preferable alternative because this way doesn't involve you hitting glasses with hammers. Your way does. We're trying to avoid broken glass. It's referencing the goal. I just instantiated something else, right? So I've instantiated now the approach. I've instantiated the observer. I've instantiated the other agent. And most importantly, for TE, I've instantiated the goal. Because the goal is that which constrains TE and makes it situationally objective. Only if I agree to approximate my goal as a status so that it can be metaphysically dealt with via TI. TI is the most purely metaphysical of all the functions. Its physical manifestation is seen in ISTPs and ESTPs who see consistencies as instrumental fundamentally to subjective goals, which is fine, but wrong and evil, but fine. The TI is communicability because it says, well, let's pretend the observer's not there. TI says, let's pretend it's just one instantiation. Instead of it being, Susie said I should eat a ham sandwich, which then allows for the reason and justification that, well, I should eat the sandwich because Susie says so and Susie's the boss. Let's eliminate those individual, personal, FE kind of hierarchical considerations and say, what is your reason why this sandwich ought to be eaten? Let's use passive voice. Let's try to remove the subjects from the occasion. Because subjects are individuals. Individuals are necessarily particularist and contextual, and propositional logic tries to remove situational particularist variables so that it can create analogs to other contexts which we deem axiomatic, and therefore we contrast against those axioms to see what we can parse away as wrong. If my grand theory is great, but if we apply it all the way through, we realize that it shows that 2 plus 2 is 5, well, then it violates that axiomatic thing that we agree is necessarily true, so there must be something wrong in the machine, kind of a reasoning, right? All right. FE is communicability as well, but it's got the particularist universalist thing reversed. So whereas TI goes, let's eliminate the particularist concerns while adjudicating this so that we can create analogs, namely means of universalizing via saying, well, you guys all agree here on this thing for this reason. Now create an analog. Let's remove you and this thing and here. Let's just take the this reason part. FE does the opposite. FE goes, all right, let's note off consistency. Let's assume you're right about the consistency thing, and you're caring about analogs and stuff, you TI people. Now, how's Judy really going to feel about that? And what's she going to think about you? You say you want to be popular, Eric. I do want to be popular. Well, if you attack Judy, you may win that argument, but are you going to be popular? And so in this way, FE is the bridge between objectivism and TE. And TI is the bridge between objectivism and FI. Because the objective TI removes FI from the equation and contrasts against it. Whereas FE removes TI from the equation and contrasts against the instantiated goal framework of TE. That's it when it's operating on the metaphysical plane. Now, it gets complicated because there's a physical form of each of the functions as well. The physical form and metaphysical form. Not forms, really, they're aspects. And everybody has both of them, but everybody seems to value one aspect as categorical, and the other aspect is instrumental. Like, well, here's the absolute value. Our whole purpose here in gambling was to win money. You just won $1 million playing slot machines. There's no reason to continue gambling. So in that instance, the goal is winning money. Gambling is instrumental to it. When I go to Vegas, gambling itself is the goal. I want to play the slot machines for a while and not lose very much money. The winning of money, if I do, is just the instrument that makes it enough uncertainty to be fun. Okay, so why did I say all of that stuff? I don't remember really, but I'm sure it's very important. Oh yeah, SE optimization. So what SE does, it goes, look guys, I'm sorry, SI. What SI does, it goes, look guys, TI, if I have to hear one more step in this fucking conditionality chain, I'm going to kill you. FI, I don't give a fuck. FE, will you stop worrying about what everybody thinks? TE, you're an asshole. Now look, if you can get all your heuristics together, please, can we note them up a little bit bigger? Can we get them into bigger frames? Because there's too many details here. I don't want to deal with it. So, I'll tell you what. FE, let's create ever more complicated sets of social interactions and label them as single terms. You know, I'm tired of you explaining how you feel joy at the suffering of somebody that you don't like. Can we just call it Schadenfreude? That's SI becoming ever more optimal. It's saying, let's have more compressions. Bunch of words, complicated concepts. Let's compress them. Time object. What is that? Well, it's, all those things I said. And language fluidity, meaning the exchange of ideas between people, gets ever faster and more close to real time. And with real-time information exchange, as the barriers for information exchange goes down, the epistemological gains of individuals are among the most contagious of mimetic entities, because they don't just give you a fish, they make your rod and reel and fishing bait and tackle and stuff more powerful. So they naturally transfer easily because they link well to the ultimate motivator of all, money. Not really for me, but for the world in general, because even if you're not greedy at all, when you go to the bank, like I just did, and you go, ouch, then you go, I better put up some hustle on some shit and make some shit happen. Which I can, but that's why money is a universal motivator. Even if you're not greedy, you are greedy to not be poor. Everyone's greedy to not be poor. So that's a good motivator. And that's the bridge by which the communicative, externalizing, objective metrics, TI and FE, interface with the internalizing, subjective, localized metrics of TE and FI. When they do so through representations of the interests of those things, as removed from the entities who actually have those interests. It's an odd phenomenon because it's impossible to think of FI as having any weight except to somebody, as is necessarily the implicit valuing of a single human existing as a moral agent. And so to try to isolate that from the individual is to render it meaningless, which is why TI negates FI all the time. And there I'm done, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember where I was going with all of that, but I was thinking about stuff in the car. I know where I'm going with them. I'm musing it through a few times before I write it all down. Susie, any thoughts?
That was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you look like you were falling asleep there in the middle of it. But
No.
It sounded fancy. I know that. And I think I wanted something here because basically you can break down all existence to argumentation. That's what it was.
It started with a cigarette, an SI.
I burned myself, that's why. Also
Burned yourself?
Yeah, I burned myself in the car. Right here. There's one of those, but it sticks to your finger. It doesn't come clean off. And then,
you had all kinds of SI.
Yeah, I was having... then Trenton called me. Trenton called me and told me this terrible fucking story. And it linked in with all this stuff. It made me really think about it. One of his friends killed himself not very long ago. 18-year-old kid, or 19 or whatever, shot himself with a shotgun.
Is this still a video?
Yeah, but it's links in.
Okay.
It was pretty fucking dark, pretty depressing. I listened to Trenton talk about it for quite a while and commiserated and offered what insights I had, which were few and far between. But the gist of it, from my initial interpretation, was, he got stuck in make-believe shit in his head. Like the stories. You get stuck in the stories. You forget their stories. Like, it's just stories we're telling. Everybody's got this non-stop narrative pitter-patter going on in their head. This running play-by-play. Or I think everybody does, or a lot of people do. Intuitives certainly do. I think sensors do too. It's probably more boring. Anyway, so I'm driving on the freeway, pitter pattering in my head, thinking about this guy who killed himself and going, these young intuitives, they get so stuck in their head. Blah, blah, blah. Now, let me get back to thinking about this. So, okay, physical reference point. Well, there's got to be some sort of physical anchor regarding all action, metaphysical action. It's a matter of linking back. And I'm going through all this shit. I realize, Eric, you haven't engaged in a single word in your head or any kind of metaphysical action that has any physical reference point since you got in the fucking car and left Kimberly's house. You haven't seen the road signs, you haven't noticed anything, you're just in full autopilot mode going, okay, but then use universal instantiation. I knew that in my head all the time because right before I left, I looked up and refreshed my memory about quantification theory on propositional logic, which basically just says there are two new rules that you have to include all the quantifiers in English or in language, and they are universal instantiation and existential instantiation. Existential instantiation just says there exists at least one instance of something. But what occurred to me to start this whole line of thinking is there never exists just one instance because it's that TI approximation that says let's pretend this instance occurs without observation, which is what causes so many people to run afoul of understanding reality correctly. You can't instantiate without an observer. The latter supervenes upon the former. And once you get the observer in the mix, well, that's why we can't parse away particularism entirely. But we'll be constantly wrong if we forget that simple reality that our singular instantiations are approximations of, at the minimum, dual instantiations. Because when you're making arguments like that, which is what you're doing, it's like if I say, I observe a squirrel around a tree. I'm making an argument that's saying, hey, SI, render this knowledge, please. Make it a referent now. I'd like it to persist as an existential. I'd like to existentially instantiate. I'd like it to exist. Now, there's only one of those objects. And what I'm actually talking about in this instance is Kimberly and I saw a bird harassing a mouse. It was like crossing the street. It was forcing it to cross the street because it was dive bombing it. I saw that. I instantiated it into a time object when I called it in my head sort of that bird harassing the mouse, that thing I saw, And it's got a bit of a visual there that links to what I actually saw in real time, which I kind of see the line of the crosswalk. Because one of the reasons it was kind of weird is that the bird and it looked like they were walking across the crosswalk. Anyway, that's not the point. That event became observed really when I instantiated it by naming it and saying, stay in my knowledge base. I might want to refer to you later. I didn't say any of that. SI did it all automatically for me. But that's when this shit happened. It wasn't real. It didn't exist until it was instantiated. And the only way it could be instantiated is by also instantiating the observer. So when I remember an event, I remember not just the event happened, but that I was there and how I came to know of it. And this quality of a background instantiation that's like, oh, you don't have to put the yo in front of the Spanish sentence te amo. Means te amo means I love you, but there's no word I in that sentence. Why not? Well, because Spanish conjugates the verb amor. Amo means I love, because that's the only it only gets conjugated as amo if the subject is singular first person. Otherwise, it gets conjugated as like amas or a Marculase or whatever. I don't remember. The point is, you don't have to put the yo there. Well, we're so habituated to not putting the yo there that we forget a lot of times the shit that we're instantiating is determinate based upon the observer we're pretending not to instantiate. So that's why you should buy my book. That's why you should buy it, because it's got a lot of fancy words in it. I went straight through the dictionary. I found the fanciest 10% of all the words in the dictionary, and I used only those words in the book. No articles, no verbs. It's just a lot of isms and osities. I like the verb, I like the adjective, the status label, existentializable. So, if you're going to have an existential instantiation, that means you're going to create an instance of something existing. For example, I existentially instantiated the mouse getting harassed by the bird in the crosswalk when I named it, communicated it, and put it in epistemology. Well, I'm also existentially instantiating whatever I was just saying before that. I don't even remember the link. But the point is, I could do this. I could universally instantiate. In which case I'd say, there exists no instance of this set that also has this attribute. Or there exists no instance of this set that doesn't have that attribute. Or whatever. That's why when you say all of something, you're really saying none of something. It's the only meaningful way to understand it, because TI is exclusive and it's parsing, not additive. That's one to grow on, friends. Susie, you want to add something in that little...
No.
Listen, aspiring philosophers out there, if you'd like to come take philosophy bullshit lessons, I will give them for $150 an hour. Yes, that's right. I will teach you how to bullshit like a real philosopher. I'll teach you all the key terms: supervene, ontology, epistemology, metaphysical, and I'll show you how you can just mix them together randomly to create perfectly sound sentences that express deeply insightful philosophical truths. So, just a little heads up for you guys out there, aspiring philosophers. I know you make a large component of the consumer marketplace. I want a piece of your hot consumer dollar. I am giving philosophy talk lessons. Susie, would you rather learn philosophical truths or how to sound like you know philosophical truths? Which would you rather learn?
What is a philosophical truth?
Well, the answer to that question would be an example of one. Would you like to know what the answer is? Or would you rather sound like you do?
But maybe be easier to sound like you do. That would be the quick way.
Well, okay. Easier in the moment, harder because it requires more sustained effort over time. You got to keep sounding like you know. Whereas if you actually do know, you can stop sounding like it.
So you won't sound like it if you sound like it?
The more knowledgeable you are about something, the more you sound like a complete idiot. It's a universal law.
Good plan. What?
What time is it? 2 in the morning. Okay. Not that late. I think it's still acceptable if you're moving up and about out there. Neighbors. To go over there and scold them. You get back to bed. What are you people doing? I'm trying to talk to Susan. Your middle of the night noises make me think you're an intruder.
Are you getting paranoid?
No, not really. The first evening I've been here, I was a little. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was probably the cats. There's a lot of like noise of like animal shit going on. Like up along the side of the river, there's ivy, grass, not grass, but like leafy, viney shit all over. Probably rodents like that, I'm guessing. But we have a lot of cats too, so I think it may have just been cats who knocking around shit. Or ghosts. I'm not sure.
You don't believe in ghosts, do you?
Well, I don't believe in ghosts with good teeth. Either you lose your TE when you die, or only TE polar people become ghosts. Because if ghosts are trying to tell us something, they're doing
bad at
the
it.
shittiest possible job of convincing me. So, I don't know. If you really want to scare me, don't rattle something over there. Like, show up like a white ghostly form and go, woo, woo, in a really undeniable fashion. Say, hello, I'm a ghost. That means I died a while ago. I used to be a human being on the earth like you. My name was blah, blah, blah. You can look it up. I did this. You can put your hand straight through me. Go ahead. See? No body. But it looks like I have one. It's a ghostly form. Alright, now, yeah, go get your camera. You gotta charge it, huh? I'll wait. Now, that's a ghost I can believe in.
Yeah, but you haven't met any.
Nobody else has either.
People say they do.
Not that cooperative. If they met a ghost that cooperative, they'd be able to show me plenty of evidence of his existence.
But they can't take pictures.
Well, then again, I go back to my thesis. Either only polar TE people become ghosts, or you lose TE when you die. Or ghosts don't exist. That's the other possibility.
More likely.
I could existentially instantiate some if you like. There. Now they exist.
Okay.
So when we need that reference point,
but you don't know if there's one or two instances. There's assumption of two instances, yet only one is proven to you.
The second instance isn't an instance of the ghost; it's an instance of your own existence. In other words, I can't kick the soccer ball towards the goal without being on the field. And where I am on the field and where I'm kicking it from is relevant to whether or not it gets to the goal. But people keep trying to say, there, my shot's on the soccer field, I'm over here in the stands, though. Well, how did you kick the fucking ball? Hey, don't mind that. Let's not talk about that. No, let's talk about that. That's the problem. You're saying, okay, now, let's pretend all the circles are square. Okay, see? See how you're wrong, Eric? Wait. But we can't pretend all the circles are square. If they were, they wouldn't be circles. And if you have logically contradictory premises like that, then any conclusion you can draw can be drawn validly. Because if I have P as a premise, and I have not P as a premise, I can use a rule of inference called addition to say, well, if P, then P or Q. And And I can take that not P and say, well, P or Q, but not P, therefore Q. Disjunctive syllogism. I've just proved Q. It's totally a valid conclusion. Well, yeah, but your premises contradict each other. That's why it's valid and totally not sound and fallacious. So stop being fallacious. That's my motto. That's my categorical imperative. People for the ethical treatment of reasoning. Fallacies are barbaric.
Fallacies are barbaric.
They are. I had to experience that barbarism firsthand tonight, Susie. I spent quite some time talking to an ESTP. Awful.
Yeah, I heard that, and you made a video on it.
But I didn't upload it. I didn't upload this one. It was awful. Imagine, it's like going to a restaurant, and it looks just like a restaurant, and they're carrying plates of stuff around, and put that in front of you, and it's like old Christmas decorations and some sticks they got from the ground outside, and you're like, I ordered pot roast. And they're like, these Christmas decorations, the most delicious Christmas decorations you're ever going to taste. Ew, I hate you. I hate ESTPs. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. I really felt the need to really say a bunch of stuff right there. It's been a long time since I had a big fucking idea ramble.